not recognise the street. He guessed it was on the outskirts of the city. The eclectic mix of businesses that he saw there made strange but somehow fitting bedfellows. A tobacconist's next to a smokehouse, an undertaker's across the road from a public house, a pie shop underneath a barber's. Here too, it was Christmas, and all were doing a roaring trade. Scrooge spied a certain warehouse door and sprang across the roadway with improbable cries of "Fezziwigs! Fezziwigs!" The White Lady did not follow her charge immediately, but looked down at Marley. "Sweet one, I love you dearly, but I simply will not be prompted," she said, as her hands started fiddling with the chain that held Marley. "Oh, what do you mean to do with me, madam?" he asked. "Simply to let you away for a while," she said. "You are darling, but I'll catch all kinds of hell if old Pantaloon's redemption goes up the Swanee because of your interference." I think I'll have that, thank you." She plucked the candle from his hands. "Can't have you playing at will-o'-the-wisp. Now, up and away with you." She let loose the chain with a flick and set Marley floating on the breeze. He drifted with the air currents and in the passing wakes of people like a gossamer spider. The White Lady called after him that she would collect him later as she disappeared into the warehouse after Scrooge. Marley flew, helpless and chaotic, yet enjoying the giddy ride of it all, latching onto one person's shadow and then flying off with another. At one point, he was swept up in the helter-skelter pelt of a young boy, dressed in ragged clothes but sporting a top hat. The boy himself was being pursued by the beadle and officers, who had no chance of catching up to the spry little thief, for thief he undoubtedly was. His legs were younger, his eye was keener, and his heart was lighter than any of his would-be captors. The boy darted down passageways, squeezed between stalls, and skipped upstairs. He danced along rooftops, singing as he went. When it was clear that the pursuit had been given up, the boy slowed down, stopped, and sat by a soot-covered wall in the area known as Saffron. The boy ate the fruit cake that he'd stolen. It was dark and moist, with a heady aroma of spiced rum. There was a whistle from the darkness, 2 odd little chirrups, and then a low note. The boy, he answered with a snatch of tune of his own, and then called out, "Bates! Bates, come and get your Christmas feast. No other coves, mind you, unless they wanted tanning." The shadows shifted, and one of them dislodged itself and walked towards the boy, who was smiling through handfuls of dried fruit. Marley floated up and away as the boys laughed and feasted. Up he went, up the length of blackened wall he rose to the place where the roof of this building might have been. I say might have been because the roof was barely in attendance, blazed away by fire. The remnants of the struts stood starkly against the winter sky like the blackened limbs of a barren winter tree. Marley heard a lusty baritone voice singing within the scorched interior. The sound held magnetism for him, for he drifted, and he knew not how, down its crotchets and quavers, over its sharps, under its flats, and into the ruined building. "Huzzah, huzzah, in our good town, the bread shall be white and the liquor be brown. So here, my old fellow, I drink to thee, and the health of every other tree." In the building were figures of ghosts of all kinds. One, evidently of a musical bent, bowed as others applauded. They sat on blackened barrels, lounged on piles of ash, or simply draped upon the ground. A fine mist hung in the air, which lent a spooky ambience that was entirely in keeping with the gathered throng. As the applause abated, Marley settled on a charcoal beam, gathered his chains around him, and watched the party below. Marley had witnessed a great many ghosts since his own passing, all in various humours, but he'd never perceived a spirit who was drunk. Yet that was what he saw now. Make no bones about it. The convivial throng were utterly pie-eyed, as the expression is. The singer staggered off the makeshift stage, a flat-backed brewer's cart with crates piled up to provide access, and past another ghost ascending who playfully tugged on the rope strung around the singer's neck, sending him skidding down off the last crate. "Careful of yourself, Brown Hills," said the one who took the stage. "Yeah, a very good swing at it, I'd say. A good swing indeed." And to emphasise his point, the ghost pantomimed hanging limply from a rope. The night's host was of the Regency mould, a man of high fashion, with a powdered wig and brocaded jacket. "And furthermore," continued the Regency, "I feel we should raise a glass to our benefactor, Mr. Henry Muir, for whom we must thank for this current benison." At this he raised a glass in the air, a ghostly glass filled with what Marley took to be liquor of some kind. Marley saw that the rest of the throng were also so furnished. The ghost of a glass, the spirit of a spirit. How could that be possible? "I believe we also have Mr. Muir to thank for some of our esteemed company," the Regency inquired, scanning the crowd for recognition. He was met with a ragged cheer from a lot of company who were very tight indeed. They were dressed in mourning, as if they thought that the condition of being dead was not quite morbid enough, but had decided to accessorize the occasion. "Were it not for Mr. Muir's continuing catastrophes, why, we may have had to resort to the leavings of plum puddings again this year. But with the fire at the brewery this last week, means there's hogshead enough for all. Though I'll outdrink any other lot of you, or my name's not Fanny. No, nor the name of me aunt neither," said the Regency. So it came to Marley's understanding, as it should to yours, that when good drink is set to the fire, the ghost of it lingers in the atmosphere and can become at the disposal of supernatural entities. Perhaps you'll think upon that next time you set fire to a plum pudding, and perhaps you might dose it with a more liberal hand of brandy because of it. A fine party they made of it too, with guests drifting in from all parts and of all social classes. Royalty processed in, one after the other, from the direction of the Tower of London, all bickering good-naturedly on who should rightly bow to who. A garrison of soldiers of all eras took to roughhousing with each other in the full view of a slew of consumptive ladies who duly swooned with feigned horror and barely concealed delight at the antics. Sailors, their pallors green and bloated, shimmied up into the rafters and festooned them with ghostly seaweed to lend a festive air to the room, and children, to be true, too many children, ran between the more mature company and nipped at unattended glasses of alcohol, laughing with glee. At first it did Marley good to see such jollity within the hearts of his brethren, but then he noticed not one of those ghosts wore chains. Where were their fetters? His jealousy worked on him like a piece of grit in an eye. Then a character called Lucky drew up a spectral barrel of sherry wine and thumped out a rhythm with his foot upon it whilst playing a squeeze box. This was the cue for all to dance, and the floor was cleared. Up and down they went, dancing and kicking up their heels and rollicking loud enough to wake the living. Fanny took to the dance floor and danced with each of King Henry VIII's wives in turn, calling out, "Divorced, beheaded, died. Divorced, beheaded, survived," in turn, to which a stern German matron took mock umbrage, saying, "I survived as well. Well, I did till I died." And they all fell about in laughter. The soldiers danced with the ladies, and the sailors did jigs with the children. They danced the cotillion, the lancers, the haymakers, the 8-stone reel, and 100 others. And oh, how Marley wished he might join them, but he feared that his stature and his chains made that impossible. But engrossed in the proceedings as he was, Marley did not notice that one of the sailors in his cups had climbed the same truss as Marley. Now, I know I've said that ghosts have little substance to them, but still little is some, and that substance becomes multiplied when their passions are high. No doubt you've heard of poltergeists and the like. So it was that the combined dancing of the sailor and the relative weakness of the beam conspired to make a crack, then a snap, And then a mad slam-bam tumble-down of sailor, beam, Marley and all into the awaiting congregation. The dance abated not one moment. The timber was danced around, the sailor was borne aloft, and Marley landed on the rim of a glass. Being in among the party was even more fascinating than observing it. The mist had a smell like frost on iron, yet also a measure of roses. It tasted like wine and tears, though whether the tears of grief or happiness, Marley could not tell. He took a moment to study the ghost holding the glass. She was a lady from the party of mourners, ruddy of face and quick to laughter. And like her compatriots, she wore no chains. Marley had assumed that Linton, the White Lady, the Jester, and the King had all got no chains because they were engaged on a spiritual commission. But these spirits of the past were on no such contract, and so by Marley's reckoning should have been bedecked in the same style as he. After a moment, though, he fancied he saw around the good lady's neck some of the mist start to knot and coalesce. This was at the same time that a look of sadness passed over her face, like the shadow of a memory. As her countenance darkened, the mist became very much like the links of chains. But this was cut short by the lady lifting the glass to her lips and taking a large draught. Now, so intent was Marley on the chains that as the glass was raised, he tumbled down into the liquor and swilled suddenly towards the great mouth. He fought against the tide, chains barring him from any great shows of swimming prowess, but nevertheless he was drawn back until he thought it inevitable that he would be consumed by the spirit. But just as he thought he was lost, the thirst of the giant mourner must have been slaked, and she righted the glass. Marley saw that as she swallowed, the chains dissipated with a sound like children's laughter and became mist once more. It took a bare moment for Marley to understand what happened. But the moment he understood, he ducked under the waterline and he drank. He drank greedily and he drank deep, swimming about in the glass. It was a sweet, sticky brew with hints of smoke and timber, but even if the taste had been as foul as that of a cesspool, Marley would have drunk it down with glee. He gathered his chains up around him and he eyed them, treading liquor, supping, waiting and hoping for any sign of pop, 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 pop. 4 links on the end of his chains evaporated into nothing. He drank more, pop, 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 and then again, more. Marley drank until every one of his chains burst and popped and became mist. Now, I'm sure you're aware of how it feels to take off a pair of shoes that you've been wearing for slightly too long. The relief of it and the release can be immense, even if you had felt no discomfort in the wearing. So, now, imagine that had been extended for 7 years of constriction. And that pain which had become part of who you were, was gone in an instant. Marley sighed. He was free of the chains. He was free. He climbed up onto the rim of the glass, rather unsteadily, and he gave out a cheer. Yes! He felt so light. He wanted to dance. He wanted to take the lady that had taught him this trick into his arms and dance her around the room till she exploded in peals of laughter. He wanted to clap the Regency on the back and stamp along with the music of Lucky's squeeze box. He wanted to run with the children and speak to the consumptive ladies. And he wanted to celebrate the freedom and rejoice in it, drunk as he was. Daisy, Daisy. Oh, no! But the party was now dispersing. The Regency stood at the doorway to the yard, shaking hands with royalty and children alike. The mood quietened down into that melancholic happiness that one has at the end of a holiday season. As the ghost left the yard, parts of the mist followed each of them like spectral mufflers at their throats, piece by piece, dividing itself out, and, for some, already reforming itself into the shapes of chains and restraints. Eventually, the only person other than Marley left in the yard was the Regency, who who in his turn drained his glass, bowed goodbye to the empty space, and vanished, leaving Marley alone, dancing on the rim of a glass and looking up into the stars that frosted the ice-cold sky. This reverie was ruined, however, by a voice. "You're drunk," it said in an amused tone. Marley turned on his heel to find the White Lady peering down at the glass. Behind her was Scrooge, who was dancing in much the same fashion as Marley had been just a moment ago. Yes, I am," said Marley. "You are a very observant person, madam, and if I may say so as well, you're a very lovely one too." "You drunken mop," she said, scooped him up and placed him in the bowl of the candle holder, which had regained its former dimensions. "And no chains too," she continued. "You'll regret that." "Where are we going next?" Marley said, as he half stumbled and half danced around the candle. "Last stop, then home," she said. Marley stamped a truculent foot and stuck out his lip in mock indignation. "No, I refuse," he slurred. "You are admirable. You, madam, are lovely company, and I would tarry with you a while longer." "Our time grows short. Now come, sit down before you fall down," she said. "Draw close to the candle. Its warmth should help you sober up in short order." A thin mist began to play around Marley's throat. At this, the White Lady collected the jigging Scrooge, took his hand in hers, and gave whatever subtle clue she needed to signify a change of scene.